Today we're going to create our own cups for making our dice, for two reasons. One, to use less of the silicone, and two, so that we can put the label of the name of what kind of dice it is. So using Tinkercad, I have my dice models in there, and then I'm just going to make some cylinders and make them into cups by putting a hole in the middle of it. And then I'm going to scale my cup to fit the dice as best as I can, and I'm going to have my number one side down, and then I'm going to embed essentially my toothpick into my cylinder, as well as the text of what dice it is. So here I'm just putting my little toothpick, and I have my cylinder and my dice centered, and then I'm going to put my toothpick slightly off center so that it goes away from the number as best as I can. And then I'm going to do 20E because the dice that I have are my edged dice that I created. And then I'm going to put it inside the cup so that it will leave the indentation, so that when I look at my molds I know which ones are which die and can easily grab them. And to put the number in there, I'm going to combine it, and then to get rid of the outside of that, I'm going to create a sleeve essentially for a hole to go around the outside of my cup, and delete the side so that it fits just right like that. And now I will create one for each of my other dice. Now the idea here is to not have to have a toothpick, not to have to get a cup. You would just print this and then stick your dice in there and you're done. You don't have to do anything in particular with the putty and gluing a toothpick and then sticking the toothpick in the putty. It's already aligned the way that it needs to be. The problem that I noticed later as I'm creating this is, sure, there's a little toothpick, but there's no reservoir for the resin to go into. So at the end, I'm going to turn my little toothpick into more of a cone shape so that there's a little bit of a reservoir for excess resin, which we want when we put it in our pressure pot so that it will fill in the bubbles. This will also be handy if you're making some custom dice that are miniature or even jumbo sized. You can just scale the cup to fit the size of the dice that you need. I would like to give another huge thank you to all my patrons for making this possible. And if you're also wanting these cups as well as to become a patron and support this channel, please go to patreon.com/geekhappens and sign up. These files will be available, as well as any modifications that I make to them in the future. Not to mention discounts at my store at 3dmtabletop.com on several Dungeons & Dragons accessories and goodies. So here I'm converting my little toothpick into a reservoir with a cone shape that I'm going to put a little flat top on to make a good surface to glue the dice to. And then once it's ready, I'm going to print just the D20 and try it out and see how well it works. I'm going to use it on the FDM printer, not the resin, just because I want it to be cheap and not waste any of my resin. Although it will probably be easier to see through if I used a clear resin as opposed to a clear filament, but this test is just to see if it will work the way that I want. So here's my printed cup with my text on the inside, my master dice that I'm going to put in there, and I'm noticing as I try to stick it in there that my fingers are a bit too fat to go into this cylinder. I have to grab it just barely with the tips of my fingers to be able to get it in there. And even with the clear filament, it's a little bit too thick to see through it very well to see exactly where it is with a clear master. But I'm going to use my Instaset accelerator glue, so I'm going to take a little bit of the accelerant, put it on the dice, take a little bit of glue, put it on my little toothpick reservoir on the inside, and then try not to mess up as I stick it in and hold it for just 1 or 2 seconds is all it's going to take to instantly bond it there. The cup isn't as easy to see through as I would like it to be, so I'm going to try to line it up just right before I go in. There's only one chance at this, without having to do it again of course, but you know what I mean. No pressure. And voila! It was just right. Perfectly in the middle. Now we're just gonna fill it up with our silicone while we're doing our other molds. And then we'll put that in the pressure pot to make sure that we don't have any bubbles in our mold. Now initially I was hoping that I could just pop this right out of the cup without having to cut it like the others, but as also somewhat expected because of the number on the inside, I knew it wouldn't just slide right out, but I was hoping I could kind of squish it out. But it didn't quite work, so I ended up having to cut it just like I would the cups. And with the layer lines, it was easy to just cut it and then peel it along the layer line and eventually get the whole thing out. And I think it looks really good, and actually was very efficient use of the silicone. There's not much waste at all. And you can see the number in the side really easy. And the layer lines actually give it a good grip, especially when you're wearing your gloves when you're pouring resin. It's easier to hold on to, as well as to open and get the dice out. So I'm going to just use the little hole that I have, go around the outside edge, get it kind of loosened up, and then find the edge that I want to cut on to go along. And I'm going to cut down that side. And then the other side I'm just going to cut just down to the top surface as well, just so that it has more of an ability to open. I also used the Dragon Skin 10 for this mold, so when I go to get it out, I'm going to work around the outsides to get it loosened up and get the suction out of it before I just pull it open on the sides and then push from the bottom and pop it out as I roll it. And I actually think it's a little bit easier to get out than the other molds that I've done with the cups. So I'm pretty happy there. Probably because it's a little thinner around the outside, where it's just a cylinder as opposed to like a funnel shape. And to finish, I poured some resin and made a die. And now we're gonna pop it out and see how it did. That is a gorgeous D20, except for one minor detail on the very top where I glued it. The drop of glue was a little bit too thick and actually bled into the 13 on the side. If I want to use these in the future, I would probably make the walls a little thinner and maybe make it more of a taper or funnel shape like the cup so that my fingers can fit in there. Hopefully this will be a helpful tool in your dice making experiences. If you like this video, please share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.